Today on Straight Talk Africa, we have opened the telephone lines for you, the audience, so that you may ask any question that is on your mind, or express an opinion, or make any comment that reflects the concerns of your community or neighborhood. In other words, it's your show. You set the agenda. That's coming up next on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America studios here in Washington. It's Wednesday, December 14th. I am Shaka Ssali. Today, we have opened the telephone lines for you, the audience, so that you may ask any question that may be on your mind, or make any comment or express an opinion that may reflect the concerns of your community or neighborhood. In other words, it's your show. You set the agenda. Mainland Tanzania recently celebrated its 50th anniversary of independence. Parliamentary elections in Ivory Coast may be bringing more change to that nation, and the re-election of the Democratic Republic of Congo's Joseph Kabila is being noted with interest and concern across the continent. My colleague Paul Cisco has more on the story.
We begin in the DRC. Newly re-elected President Joseph Kabila is rejecting the findings of the U.S.-based Carter Center that the presidential election results lack credibility. Kabila concedes there were mistakes in the process, but the outcome, he says, cannot be doubted. The vote count was immediately rejected by the main opposition challenger, Etienne Tshisekedi, and others. A spokesman for the Carter Center says the vote was marred by wide vote variations in the quality of the vote counting. And there is evidence votes from nearly 2,000 voting stations in Kinshasa were lost. Many locations around the country reported 99 to 100% voter turnout, with most or all of the votes going to the incumbent president. By law, electoral challenges have to come to the Supreme Court. Tshisekedi says the court does not have the independence to rule fairly. A confident President Kabila disagrees, saying the election was legitimate. On to the Ivory Coast, and what a difference a year makes. Ivorians went to the polls Sunday in parliamentary elections that appear to be strengthening the ruling coalition of President Alassane Ouattara.
This parliament will be a real democratic parliament and one of consensus, and this parliament will contribute toward reinforcing democracy in our country.
Voter turnout was low, and many polling stations opened late under tight security. However, election observers say voting took place in a largely calm manner. Ouattara won presidential elections in November 2010. Then, after months of violent clashes and with international help, he wrestled power from ex-leader Laurent Gbagbo, who rejected the results. Gbagbo is now facing charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Finally, Tanzania. The occasion of the 50th anniversary of independence of mainland Tanzania is a clear indication that independence and real freedom works when citizens are united. Then called Tanganyika, the nation gained independence from British colonial rule December 9, 1961, after a struggle championed by Julius Nyerere. The Pan-Africanist helped create a new political culture, and in 1964 a political marriage between Zanzibar and Tanganyika, resulting in the United Republic of Tanzania. Today, Tanzania is one of Africa's most peaceful nations. Its economy, one of sub-Saharan Africa's best performing, and currently East Africa's second biggest. President Jakaya Kikwete is expected to step down in 2015, at the end of his second and final term in office. Critics say his attempts to curb corruption in the nation leave a lot to be desired. Paul Cisco, VOA News.
Thanks, Paul, for that interesting report. Now, joining us here in our Washington studios are two distinguished guests. Gnaka Lagoke, an African political analyst. It's a pleasure, of course, Gnaka, to have you again on Straight Talk Africa.
Oh, thank you very much.
Kambale Musavuli, student coordinator, the national spokesperson of the Friends of the Congo, a non-profit advocacy group that brings attention to the continuing atrocities occurring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a pleasure, of course, to meet you again, Kambale.
Yeah, thank you.
The other Kambale that I have met before, who probably comes from the same general area where you come from, happens to be a lawyer.
That's called Kambale, I hope.
Yeah, he's called Kambale, and works, I think, for the Soros Foundation, Open Society.
Yes.
And last but not least, Rosemary Mwakitwange, Executive Chairperson for the East Africa Business and Media Training Institute, who joins us via telephone link-up from the Tanzanian commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. Well, I have to say that, Rosemary, it's a pleasure having you again on Straight Talk Africa, all the way from Dar es Salaam.
The pleasure is mine, kaka yangu Shaka.
You're most welcome, Ndugu. Well, later in the program, we'll give you, the audience, a chance to call and talk with our guests. The number to call is 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. Let me stay with you very briefly, Rosemary, since you are on the ground in Tanzania. You just celebrated 50 years of political, some might say, flag independence. Is that Tanzania, or is it mainland Tanzania that some might call Tanganyika? Because the last time I checked, it was Tanganyika, in fact, that got independence in 1961, Zanzibar getting its own 1964.
That's the catch-22, Shaka. As you know, as the country is now into, the hula baloo of new constitution, the question is who are we? But I mean, talking about the country, we are referring to the United Republic of Tanzania. Much as you said, scientifically, it is definitely the country that got its independence 50 years ago, which is Tanganyika then.
I see. I recall that back in 1970, when then President Julius Kambarage Nyerere was being asked what was his perhaps single most important accomplishment, during the 9-10 years that he had actually been in charge, and he said, Tanzania has been able to survive. Now that you have actually been politically independent for the last 50 years, what would you say is the single most important accomplishment, frankly, that the United Republic of Tanzania has accomplished?
I think one of the things that I, as a Tanzanians, would recognize for will be our role in the political independence of the southern, part of the continent. But internally, I think that, yes, there are achievements. We have more challenges. I think we have more challenges as a country where we are than what we can record as its historical, yardsticks over time since 50 years ago.
I see. How do you respond to some people who are so curious as to why, for example, given that Tanzania is a member of the regional East African community, how come there was not a single head of state from the four other members of the East African community, frankly, attending those celebrations, those important celebrations?
It is topical, and the media has been, picking it spontaneously. We know, for example, the foreign minister had a whole, page of responses to what really happened. It ranges from, having invited the office and not personalities. Others are arguing that, it's, as long as they were represented. But I, as Rosemary, I think to be justice to the people of this country, we definitely expected more than that. This is not just an ordinary birthday party or annual anniversary. It is 50 years, Shaka. It is 50 years of our independence. And yes, we do. It's obvious that there are issues on the ground, but I think for me, at the end of the day, is to what is actually, as a country, who are we, and what do we want out of this regional integrations and friendships as people, as a country. So I think it's not just about Tanzania. If you look at the region right now, the whole issue is what do we want out of EAC is still debatable, ranging from not just about, you know, the 50th anniversary, but looking at what, for example, our president's role during the 2008 standoff of Kenya. One would have expected Kenya, for example, to have given us a more visible, you know, presence of themselves during this time. But again, we go down and ask ourselves, are we really committed to EAC? And at the end of the day, what is there for us as a country, us as a region? Definitely there is a disconnect in terms of expectations between the political regime of the country vis-a-vis its people. I mean, Tanzanians have been raising lots of issues as to what is there for the Tanzanians. I mean, in terms of priorities, what are we getting out of the regional, you know, relation? Is it just historical because it happened at that time? Are we ready to look at it openly and really identify, as a country, who do we want to be friends with? Who do we want to retain as neighbors, for example? And unless these issues are discussed, it's going to be very difficult. And we as people on the ground are pushing for a visible and very clear definition of this kind of partnership so that our expectations are managed.
Very interesting. In addition, of course, one might also say that Tanzania played a very significant role in the removal of Ugandan dictator Field Marshal Idi Amin Dada back in 1979, and that it was, in fact, yes, the University of East Africa, but in fact the Dar es Salaam campus, where the incumbent Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, went to school.
And many others. I mean, looking at it now, for example, the Attorney General of Kenya, I think, went through that college, and many others. But again, I mean, we don't want to blame people. We want to be able to identify what are our controllable variables, for example. And I'm still going back to saying, what is our foreign policy in the region? I think again, looking at now 50 years from where we came from, during, you know, the times of, you know, Mwalimu Nyerere, and even after that, we were kind of, you know, a lot more clear of what we want and who we are in any of these partnerships. So I think I'm not blaming my government, but I'm saying I think there is a need to not feel shy of attending to these issues. And let's not hide behind, you know, it happened, it's normal. It's definitely not normal. If I invite a lady of the house, of a neighbor, and they send me some, you know, aunties and uncles, it's not normal. It's not normal. Maybe everybody's too busy, but definitely there is the need, if we are to parade as we claim that this is one of the, you know, partnership of choice that the whole world of Africa should be proud of, we need to walk the talk.
Interesting.
Right now, but again, maybe it's an opportunity now after this that, you know, the country sit down and decide as to where do you want to go. Because people are asking, not just us, people within the country, people within the region, people globally. You are asking, Shaka, what is happening back home.
Interesting, interesting. Let me come to you very quickly, Gnaka. I know that you come from West Africa, but you are a Pan-Africanist. I recall that back in 1999, I had just been in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, having interviewed then President Laurent Désiré Kabila in Lubumbashi. And I learned at Njiri International Airport that Nyerere had died. And I sought permission, in fact, to go to Dar es Salaam so that I could pay my last respects to President Nyerere. You can't believe how many people were there. All the presidents of East Africa were right there. Almost anybody who was who, including Madeleine Albright, who was then Secretary of State for the United States, was right there. In fact, I was able to eventually get an interview with Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moi because we just met there through a chance encounter, someone I had been tracing, in fact, trying to access for the 7 years. What makes you, well, you probably answer it later after the break. One would have expected, frankly, East African leaders to be present in Dar es Salaam to help celebrate 50 years of independence. Before we pause for a short break, we would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is on the social networking website Facebook. Just put in the keyword Straight Talk Africa and become a fan and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.
Aftermath of the Democratic Republic of Congo election. According to provisional results, on Friday, December 9th, President Joseph Kabila secured 49% of the vote, and Etienne Tshisekedi won 32%. Kabila's win will extend his reign to at least 15 years. He won the last poll in 2006, having come to power after his father was assassinated in 2001. Kabila's chances of re-election were boosted when Parliament approved constitutional changes that eliminated the need for a runoff if no candidate secures an absolute majority. After the results, there were reports of civilians with arms in the streets of the capital, Kinshasa, with gunfire breaking out elsewhere in the country. Human Rights Watch says at least 20 people were killed and 100 others were injured in violence leading up to the November 28th vote. Kabila has admitted that some mistakes were made in the election process, but says the results must not be put in doubt.
Voice of America provides you with African and world news around the clock. Wake up with Daybreak Africa, and in the evening, listen to African News Tonight, and on weekends, it's Nightline Africa. You can also hear VOA newscast at the top of each hour and World News Now. Visit us online to listen to your favorite news shows or check the latest updates. Go to www.voaafrica.com.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. What's your opinion about today's topic? Call us at 202-619-3111, U.S. country code 1. When you call, please remember, ask only one question. Keep it very brief and turn down the volume on your radio or television. And now, let's go back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Iman Niragavira Shaka, and of course we are back here in Studio 47. Gnaka, I had put a question to you just before the break. Can you give us a sense as to why you probably think these presidents, who are really members of the East African community, of which Tanzania is one of the 5 members, could not go to Dar es Salaam to help celebrate 50 years of independence? Isn't 50 years a very important milestone?
Yeah, 50 years is very important. I'm going to seize the opportunity to really, say something about Nyerere and the Pan-African vision and where we are today in the eastern part of Africa and on the whole continent of Africa. There is a scholar who works at the World Bank, Mr. Fofak, who said once that Africa suffered not because of poverty, but for the loss of a vision. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the Golden Jubilee of Tanzania, I think about the African philosophical concept Nyerere tried to promote, the Ujamaa, related to the Pan-African vision that today we don't see the current leadership of Tanzania, we don't see them promoting that vision. Mm-hmm. So then of course we're not going to be surprised if they don't promote that sense of interconnectedness in that part of Africa. So for me, when we look at the failure of neoliberal policies, we see Europe is in crisis, America is in crisis, and we know that socialism seemed to have failed by year 1990. Today it is time for us to come with a new African philosophical system, a grand theory that we can use to promote humanness, and we can use to promote interconnectedness and unity in order to develop Africa. And when we look back, when we look at all those theoretical concepts, we don't have any other choice but to think about Ujamaa.
When you talk about vision, or the vision thing as someone might say, what exactly are you talking about?
When we talk about vision, for instance, when you talk about capitalism, they define that theory and there are some tenets of that theory, and they implement that, that concept in politics, society, economics, and different sectors of the society in the Western world. So in Africa, we don't have that. We don't have like a common agenda.
You are talking about a roadmap, correct?
Yeah, roadmap is just...
That provides you a direction as to where to go.
This is the practical implementation of a vision. The roadmap is just a practical concept. I'm talking about a grand theory, the same way Chinese talk about Confucianism.
But that, how does that really, what does that have to do with a country somehow celebrating 50 years of independence, and its neighbors who work with it day in, week in, month out, do not attend?
But this is what I'm saying. If people don't have a sense of unity, if they don't have, they don't think that they're concerned about what is going on in the neighbor's country, why do you think that they're going to go there? So we, as Pan-Africanists, we need to promote a vision of interconnectedness, of unity, of cooperation. It doesn't exist on the continent of Africa.
What about you, Kambale? I mean, I don't really think that this could be correct, because first of all, Rosemary from Dar es Salaam told us how back in 2008, the incumbent president of Tanzania, Jakaya Kikwete, was able to play a very crucial role in helping to end the post-election violence in Kenya, which helped to bring a government of national unity, which is shared between supporters of President Mwai Kibaki and now Prime Minister Raila Odinga. It was Jakaya Kikwete and Kofi Annan right there.
But the issue, I think, where I'm seeing the clash in terms of what Pan-Africanism means, and when you're speaking actually about the leaders in these countries, they say they are Pan-African. It does not mean that they apply those visions. So whenever I'm looking at the East African community, and I look at each one of those leaders who are supposed to attend, they have internal issues within their own country. So they will use Pan-Africanism when it's convenient to rally other countries, other support of Pan-Africanism to believe in their ideas. Just coming here, it was kind of interesting, looking at even my country itself, that there were people believing that Joseph Kabila is a Pan-African because he's standing up to the West. He's talking about rapprochement with one of the Eastern community country, Rwanda, which is just terms that they use. They don't necessarily implement that. The way I'm seeing that more so is building in an institution that will produce those leaders who will have that vision. That rather than thinking about what are the leaders of the East African community doing when Tanzania is actually having their 50th anniversary of independence. That's meaningless. It's what are the institutions who are going to build the leaders who understand the vision of Pan-Africanism and carry it within their own community in these countries.
Talking about the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who obviously happens to be your president, he is a man that I once knew very well. He is a man that if you're talking about the rhetoric of Pan-Africanism, he probably has a PhD in that. Now the question is, do some of these leaders, frankly, simply give lip service to African unity, to Pan-Africanism, to regional integration? Do they only talk the talk, but when it comes to walk that talk so that the ordinary people can walk the walk, they're actually not there?
Yeah, but some of these leaders didn't come from the people. When I look at Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah, I'm seeing grassroots movement will help them get to the power where they are now. These leaders today that I'm looking at, specifically speaking about Joseph Kabila of the Congo, came through power through the barrel of a gun and rule as oppressors. So when I'm seeing someone like that running a country, I do not see him as a Pan-African, definitely. I'm seeing it as an opportunist who will use whichever position that's convenient at the time to justify their actions within the country. And I must insist, these leaders have to come from the leaders for us to even have an analysis of why they are not pushing for Pan-Africanism into the continent, into the region, and into their own country.
In fairness to what you just said, especially about the AK-47, the people that, you know, access AK-47 or weapons and use them with the rhetoric of liberating their people, when in fact they are probably, at the end of the day, being patriotic to, someone might say, to their stomachs.
That's true.
But what about the fact that it really doesn't matter how many weapons you have, you could go to the bush, and not so many people are going to follow you. Not so many ordinary people are going to support you. Do you really think that you can actually win with a gun without the support of your people?
If I can interject, you know, of course, if you want to talk about Ivory Coast, and I like what you just said, because when it was said that Mr. Ouattara won the election, and then we know that he came, he organized his resistance using weapons and violence and a rebellion. And then when Gbagbo did not want to relinquish power, and then he gave a green light to his rebels to attack the army loyal to Gbagbo.
Why didn't Gbagbo want to relinquish power when the international community and almost everybody said he had lost the vote?
I'm not saying that Gbagbo should have stayed in power. I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you some facts so that you can see what is going on today as we're talking about Africa. So when the UN and the French troops, you know, and the French helicopters bombed the army of Ivory Coast, of which Mr. Ouattara was supposed to be the commander-in-chief, today he's in power. He's been there. He's been the effective president of Ivory Coast for 7-8 months. So what do we see? Looting, robberies, killing, extrajudicial killings, rape. This is what we see today.
I see.
So how somebody, usually you govern through the means by which we come to power. And so somebody like Obama, who is one of my heroes, I think that he put the reputation of his country and his own reputation on line when he was thinking that destroying Gbagbo, he was supporting democracy through Mr. Ouattara. And today, they cannot even talk about the turnout of the legislative elections because it could not even reach 20%.
It was 35% from what I have seen.
No, that's the number they fixed. All the media, even Voice of America, said that the turnout was very low. So
yeah, it was very low. 35% is low anyway.
No. On Sunday, at midnight in Ivory Coast, people could have told us that what was the participation rate. They could not. They waited for 3 days just because they wanted to fix it. The same thing they did during the presidential election. When you guys believe
when
that...
When you say they, who are you talking about? Who are
I'm talking about the people who support Ouattara. The same thing they did during the turnout in November 28. The participation rate could not be 80%. And the France 24 reported that it was going to be 70%. But when they declared the winner, they said it was 81%. That's the same thing we're seeing today, but they're living in a denial, in a situation of denial.
Let's go to the lifeline of the show, which are the telephone callers, and see what they are saying. Good afternoon, Tedla from the Big Apple. How are you? Tedla, New York, can you hear me? I'm afraid he can't. What about Patrick from Nigeria? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening, Mr.
I can't hear you, Patrick.
Yes, good evening.
No, I can't hear you.
Hello, Mr. Shaka.
I'm afraid your volume is too low.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Shaka, good evening. My question to Madam. Madam, this partnership you are talking about now on this program, I see Nigeria and social people in a place, they need it. Now, there are many variables that affect Pan-Africanism, which African leaders have failed to tackle. Look at Congo today. International community observers told us that the last week election was a failure. But the young man, they have insisted that he must stay in power at all costs. At the end of the day, who are suffering? It is the Africans, it is the people in that place that are. Now, I'm asking our guests, what do you think we will do so that other African leaders will not borrow the same copy? Thank you very much, Mr. Shaka. Thank you, our guest.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. Well, it's about time for us, I suppose, to go for a break. And when we come back, a reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa, as we, of course, open the phones for you, the audience. It's your show, and of course, you set the agenda. If you wish to participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please, don't go away.
Aftermath of the Democratic Republic of Congo election. Etienne Tshisekedi's Union for Democracy and Social Progress and other opposition parties in the Democratic Republic of Congo must file legal election challenges by December 13th, and the Supreme Court has until December 17th to ratify the results. According to the Carter Center, some of the figures posted by the Electoral Commission are suspicious, such as Katanga Province, where turnout was around 100%, with nearly all votes going to Kabila. In another district, turnout was reported to be more than 100%. Tshisekedi claims victory and remains firm in rejecting results with sizable support. Former Zambian President Rupia Banda says he has been approached to mediate the election results and is ready to fly to Congo if needed, but Mr. Kabila says that there is no crisis in the country.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. Call us now with your questions and comments. The number is 202-619-3111 and the U.S. country code is 1. Call us collect and we'll pay for the call, or call direct and we'll call you right back. Remember, keep your questions brief. And now, back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel Shaka. And hello, I'm Shaka Ssali. Welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. If you have just joined us, we have opened the telephone lines for you, the audience, so that you may ask any questions that may be on your mind, or make any comment or express an opinion that may reflect the concerns of your community or neighborhood. In other words, it's your show, you set the agenda. Our distinguished guests are Gnaka Lagoke, an African political analyst, Kambale Musavuli, student coordinator and a national spokesperson of the Friends of the Congo, a non-profit advocacy group that brings attention to the continuing atrocities occurring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And last but not least, Rosemary Mwakitwange, executive chairperson for the East Africa Business and Media Training Institute, who joins us via telephone link-up from the Tanzanian commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. Well, I have to say that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host the three of you.
Thank you. Likewise, Shaka.
You're most welcome. What about you guys? Well, I am welcoming you back to the show.
Okay, thank you very much. We're happy to be here.
I see. Now, Rosemary, there was a caller from Nigeria who asked you a question. Did you hear what he had to say?
Unfortunately, I lost you guys when he was talking.
You lost us then. I think he was talking about how a lot of these leaders on the African continent can really talk about Pan-Africanism, can talk about regional integration, but actually...
Unfortunately, I mean, I agree with all those who share the fact that our leaders have lost sense of direction. Talking about whether it's Tanzania or Congo or but what we are missing is a call of action in terms of prioritization. For example, 50 years after the continent in political independence, our leaders to date have failed to clone or generate the next level of leaders that could carry the vision that our elders, people like Mwalimu Nyerere, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, had. At that time, at least we knew as a continent what we were standing for. The leadership today has failed to position the continent as a market and an equal partner in trade and promotion, for example. What we see is a replacement and generation of internally displaced people, even in the countries that claim to be independent. We continue to see opportunities, even amongst the equals, not being equal. And therefore, my fear is that, we see leaders who have no confidence to reflect fact, genuinely, that identify success using a very objective yardsticks. So, unless we go back to talking about those issues, we are continuing to drive using a rare, mirror. It's like you're driving forward, but actually using a mirror that reflects, that looks at, shows you, where you're coming from. And that's the problem. If leaders are not courageous enough to say, we did well here, but we underscore the fact that in these areas we've not been able to thrive and tell any story and get its people to talk about those issues, we will continue seeing our leaders talking about their own stomachs, and that's sad for a country that has such a potential.
Rosemary, there are some people who have actually been saying that in order for an African leader to survive or stay in power, he has to pretty much become, in their words, not mine, a nyampala, which is a word originating out of the Kiswahili language, which you definitely know better than me. Kiswahili meaning a supervisor or overseer of foreign interests. Is that something that makes sense to you?
I don't blame them, because Shaka will agree with me. It is very unfortunate, even when we talk of the likes of Kabila, this younger generation. They're lacking role models. Who will they look up to want to be like, for them to provide the kind of leadership which is expected for this, century? So we don't have any role models. Whoever the people that we wanted to embrace and, flag them as our leaders, they've become something else. I don't know whether they become thieves or thugs or anything, but they've become anything but not what we expected them to be.
I see.
And therefore, everybody is kind of, it's like when we're in the land of the blind, where, where everyone man-eyed is perceived to be, the eyes. And that's sad.
That brings me, Gnaka, to the responsibility and obligation of the ordinary African citizen.
Thank you, Shaka.
Does an African look at himself or herself as a citizen, meaning you have inalienable rights, you have birthrights, you have constitutional rights, but you also have obligations, and you owe your allegiance to the state, in which case you are the government. The president, the ministers, the members of parliament, the army generals are your employees. Or does an ordinary African look at themselves as a subject, meaning owing allegiance to an individual authority? It could be a dictator, it could be a king, but you have no rights, you simply have privileges which have to be given to you by the dictator.
In a way, anytime they wish.
But I'm going to answer quickly, because I was, anyway, going to try and say something related to that. There are two quotations which are my favorite. One is from June Jordan. We are the ones we've been waiting for. The second one is that of Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. So I denounce African leadership, but I am for African people, ordinary citizens, coming together like the young Kambale is trying to do with the Friends of the Congo. We need to organize in order to carry that vision of unity in our midst. And then if we promote that vision, the leaders who are going to represent us are going to come from our midst, and so that they can represent that vision, be at the level of the state, at the level of the city, or at any level. So we don't see that, and sometimes we sit down and we just blame the leaders, and we know they have been doing the same thing for 50 years. So it is time for us to promote a new vision, and that's why I was talking about Ujamaa. In South Africa, they talk about Ubuntu. In Uganda, I think people talk about Abantu. That humanness and interconnectedness, that communalism.
Who talks about it in Uganda? Who talks about it?
No, I say, like I'm talking about as a theoretical concept in the language. This is what I'm saying. In the language. I'm not saying that people are talking about that. I'm saying that we have that, what Shaka Ssali called that cultural and linguistic unity, like across countries in Africa. So we are one. We have to see ourselves as one people, And then in the 21st century, when we see that capitalism is failing and the socialism is failing, we need to come with an African endogenous philosophical system in order to construct a new, like a new development shift, like for the betterment of our people.
A new paradigm shift.
Yeah.
What about talking about Uganda? You have the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni at one time being quoted actually as having said that he is the only person, the only individual who has the vision think. That in effect he has a monopoly over what you are calling vision. Is that humanly possible?
No, it's not possible. No human can think that he has the monopoly of wisdom. So I'm not going to elaborate. Maybe my friend is going to. I'm giving.
But what about if in fact people around him have to some degree abdicated their responsibility and have put themselves in a situation where they feel that they do not own an opinion?
Yeah, it happens in many. It happens with African leaders. They can be Democrats, they can be dictators. People around those leaders, most of the time, they think that the only opinion they have is the opinion of the leader. So quickly, Museveni is not a Pan-Africanist. The 21st century is the century of Africa. It's the century of Pan-Africanism.
What makes you think he's not a Pan-Africanist? Look at his troops. They are in Somalia.
Oh no, I'm not talking about conquest. I was not talking about conquest. I was talking.
He helped to liberate the Republic of Southern Sudan.
Then he's also in the Democratic Republic of Congo, oppressing the people over there, and he's not defending the interests of the masses.
He says that he helped to end the genocide in Rwanda.
He actually did not end the genocide in Rwanda. He actually supported a rebellion that took over, that ended with the genocide that took place in 1994. And this is actually the biggest danger of looking at Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Yoweri Museveni of Uganda as Pan-African leaders. When another leader I can add is Zenawi of Ethiopia. These three leaders have two things in common. One, they invaded another African country, and two, they have bloods of millions of Africans on their hands that till today Africans are surviving, are suffering from that. So we have to look at this issue and say that we cannot push over the will of the people and the democratic aspiration and sacrifice it by using stability.
Why are they celebrated in the West, especially in the 1990s? There was some in the Clinton administration, including perhaps Clinton himself, who actually recognized those individuals you mentioned, plus at that time Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, and in fact even your former president, the late Laurent Désiré Kabila, as a new breed of African leaders.
Not only that, this is actually the vision, so-called vision of Bill Clinton, the so-called Renaissance leaders of Africa. But these leaders have not served the interest of Africa. They have served the interest of the United States.
What about Thabo Mbeki, who was the president of South Africa?
Right now, South Africa is in trouble. But and I'm going to bring it back.
Thabo Mbeki,
I'm going to bring it back to the situation in the Congo with the influence of South Africa.
Why don't we bring in the telephone callers and then you can have a field day. Let's go to the lifeline of the show. In fact, this is a show which is supposed, frankly, largely to be for the telephone callers, but somehow they're not on the table, so we're not being fair. Good evening, Tafa from the Republic of Ghana. You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Hello, good evening, Shaka. How are you doing?
I am hugely terrific. How are you today?
I'm great, my brother. Great. I'm campaigning, I'm campaigning on the ground now.
So what is your question, observation, comment?
Shaka, my contribution based on this African, this Golden Jubilee saga you'll be carrying. I believe that, Shaka, as Africans, we should all sit down, one nation for 10, 15 years, and sit down and cry. But our people go and sit down and money celebration. If you compare African countries and Asia, Ghana and Malaysia obtained independence the same year. But look at the Malaysian today compared to Ghana. When we were celebrating 50 years, the former government spent a lot of money. The money could have been used to build the schools and roads and hospitals. But they used it to buy champagne and enjoy themselves. So I agree with your guests. Some of the African leaders have said that, and we don't want them to be using our money to celebrate independence for 50 years. They should use it for betterment of the people. We should sit down and cry as a continent. For past years, the leaders failed the ordinary people of Africa than sit down using the money to buy champagne and celebrate. There's nothing to celebrate. We have a lot of work to do as African Shaka.
Thank you.
This celebration or whatever, it's not something good.
Thank you very much, but we do have problems with your telephone, really. It's very, very difficult to understand what you are saying because it keeps sort of breaking up. But in any case, the gentleman from Ghana essentially was talking about you know, things to do with Ghana, you know, being at the same level with Indonesia, Malaysia, whatever, but now Malaysia is ahead. You're tuned into Straight Talk Africa, and in a moment we'll return to your comments and questions. The number to call is 202-619-3111. Your country code is 1. Remember to give our operator your country code and city code if you want us to call you back, so please don't go away.
The stability of the Democratic Republic of Congo is in question following a presidential election marred by violence and allegations of fraud. Official results give incumbent leader Joseph Kabila victory in the November 28th poll, but observers from the U.S. say the vote lacks credibility. Challenger Etienne Tshisekedi has declared himself to be president. Gunfire erupted in parts of Congo over the weekend, and the opposition has announced plans for protests. The European Union and the United States are urging calm as Congo waits for its Supreme Court to decide whether to validate the vote, the second in Congo since war ended in 2003. Therefore, our question of the week is, should election results in the Democratic Republic of Congo be recognized by the international community, and why? Send an email to africatv@voanews.com or post a comment on our Facebook page and let us know.
News and features about Africa, life in the United States and the world? Watch In Focus, VOA's weekday TV program to the continent. A dedicated team of international journalists delivers stories you won't find anywhere else. Co-hosts Gnaka Lagoke and Vincent McCory on the air and on the beat. Health correspondent Lenore Madu with news to keep you healthy. And there's Sunny Young and the sunny side of sports. In Focus, TV you don't want to miss.
Did you like today's show? Write and tell us what you think, or give us some suggestions. And tell us on what station you tuned into. Here's our address: Straight Talk Africa, Voice of America, 330 Independence Avenue, Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20237, USA. Or send us an email at africatv@voanews.com. Log on to our website www.voaafrica.com or post your comments on Facebook, keyword Straight Talk Africa.
Letter of the Week. Idrissa Kamara, Straight Talk Africa viewer from Sierra Leone, writes, I was moved by the interview you conducted with Professor George Aite on the Straight Talk Africa program on defeating dictators. He stressed that taking media off the hands of dictators is one way they could be checked, though it's true, but it's not the most important, pressing, and result-oriented one. Potential violators of people's rights all over the world always capitalize on people's vulnerability, such as one's inability to get food for their family. Human rights are never respected where people are being harassed by poverty, and therefore they are less enlightened about threatening issues of the day. If a program is designed to ensure household food sufficient, then it's a starting point for building coalitions to kick the ills of society, including dictatorship. I have experimented with it and yielded the results as anticipated. I would be ready and willing to share such experiences if asked to do so.
Thanks, Donna, and thanks, Iman and Shaka, and of course, thanks, Idrissa, for responding to last week's question of the week, when we asked how long is too long? Which of Africa's longest-serving leaders should go, and why? Welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington on the Voice of America. Just a reminder, we would like to hear from you, so drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com, and maybe your letter can be read on air as our letter of the week. Our email address is africatv@voanews.com, or post your comment on our Facebook page. Just put in the keyword Straight Talk Africa. Also, you can find us on the web. Just log on at voaafrica.com. We received several correspondences from you, our audience, so that we would like to share with you. We begin with a comment from Samuel Bwache Iadom, Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan from Kumasi, Ghana. He writes, yes, the election should be recognized by all parties involved. Opposition parties in Africa don't want to work hard to win power. They always take things for granted, and when they lose, they start inciting their supporters to pick up arms. It's becoming a trend in Africa, where every opposition party wants to win power at all costs, and if they don't, they tag the whole election as fraud. Well, Samuel, your comments would make sense if the political playing field is leveled. In the case of the DRC, however, this, according to some electoral observers, happens not to be the case. For example, the Electoral Commission of the DRC clearly was not independent of the executive. But the opposition should also be blamed for participating in a process they understood to be flawed. We also have a comment from Lonje Luhanga, Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan from Ndola, Zambia, who writes, no, there were a lot of irregularities, with ballots not being counted in some areas. The counting was also not transparent. The polls were not free and fair. There was low turnout because of violence and intimidation. I also want to congratulate the Carter Center for observing these irregularities. Also, our former president, Mr. Rupia Banda, for a job well done. Lonje, your observation is most appreciated. You're quite correct in saying that the elections were neither fair nor free or transparent. And therefore, unless the highest court of the land is independent, which is said not to be the case, we agree with those who say that the election should be held again, this time perhaps under the supervision of the international community. Now let's take a look at what's next on tap for next week.
Next week on Straight Talk Africa, we look at the highs and lows of 2011. We'll have a lively discussion as we rethink the major events shaping the political landscape on the continent and the world, and consider how they are affecting Africa's future as we embark on a new year of 2012. That's next week, right here on The Voice of America.
Thank you very much. And we're back here, of course. I was going to tell you that you hear a lot of Africans complaining about why things are not working in their countries. And they begin to compare and contrast with countries in Asia like Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and what have you. So what happened to the Africans? Let's face it. The intellectual balance of power has been shifting in our favor. We don't have an excuse. Why can't we make things happen?
Well, there are things already happening on the continent. It didn't start today. It happened. I always use the example of the youth of South Africa on June 16, 1976, who rose up. There is a movement, yes, there is a movement around the world of young people who want to have a say in the decision-making process, from north to south. You know, when I'm looking at what's happening in Burkina Faso, in Gabon. So it's not that Africans are not doing. Now, coming back to the Congo, I'm saying what's happening with the will of the people and the organizing of the people inside and outside, that they also want to have a say in the decision-making process. What makes it really hard is that their voice is not supported. So the Congo is really the case. I'm looking at it. This is almost as the litmus test of democratic principles around the world. For Africans to understand that what's happening in the Congo with the challenge of the election will affect the whole entire African continent. That we all have to pay very, very close attention to what the Congolese people are doing inside and outside, and them actually taking charge after 16 years of conflict, taking charge and saying our voice was not heard at the poll, and we demand that there is an audit of the election. We demand that there is a cross-reference of the tabulations. We demand that the world does not recognize this election. So that's the call that the Congolese are putting out there for people to come and support them in their actions inside, and also the protests of the diaspora on the outside of the country.
I know that change is neither an incident nor an event, but a process.
Yes.
But there was a study done in the 1980s when Mobutu Sese Seko was in charge of a country called Zaire. And the conclusion was that the peasants themselves were actually saying, under the Belgians, they were better off than they were under their own brother Mobutu. So they were wondering, when is this thing called independence going to come to an end? Are Congolese leaders really listening to this voice?
Actually, it all depends on who you're asking these questions. You know, I will always argue that
the majority of the people.
One person who did not live under colonialism, for example, or did not know the realities of the suffering. Now think about this. I heard this from an Angolan brother one time. He said that Congo today is worse than under colonialism, because when you look at the houses of the colonials back in the 60s, they were nice. Today is completely destroyed.
People would have unfettered access to essential commodities. They would go to a corner and buy soap.
But the situation that we have today is not by accident. There are reasons why we are where we are today.
The West is responsible.
Because whenever the Congolese, right, wanted to have a say in the decision-making process in 1960, our leader was assassinated in a matter of weeks.
You're talking about, of course, Patrice Emery Lumumba.
Correct.
But let's face it, there are still many Congolese on the ground who can bring about change. You can't keep talking about foreigners.
We have them now. With the election, we see that the Congolese people have spoken.
Was this an election or a selection?
The election was not free and fair. No, we have many organizations who have said that already. Cote Center, the European Union. It's clear that the voice of the people was not heard. But in the decision-making process, the Congolese are speaking up.
Why did the
We're supporting them.
Why did the opposition participate in the election, which they thought was flawed?
They had to participate to show, right? We have to protect the institutions we have. We have weak institutions.
How many times do you have to do it?
No, we have weak institutions in the country. We can say we are not going to participate, which one of the leaders did in 2006, and we saw the result of that. Joseph Kabila. Joseph Kabila won the election in 2006. So this time around, he said, I will mobilize the people of the country so that we can show the world that when we try the system, this is actually...
He changed the constitution to make sure that you just need a simple majority because he couldn't go for the second round.
Well, the Congolese people spoke up. And that's what I want people to really realize, regardless of what Kabila will do, how he's going to steal the election. Right now, this is not just in Congo that's happening. You know, it's happening in Russia, it's happening here.
Well,
so these things are taking place around the world.
I hate to say it, but Simon from Zambia, I don't think we're going to take you. We have to go for an orbit. We'll try to talk to you next week. So let's go for the orbit. Before we go, we would be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of my colleague, Ferdinand De Ferreira, senior editor with VOA's French to Africa service, who often contributed right here on Straight Talk Africa. Ferdinand died Tuesday morning after a long battle with lung cancer. He was 59. Ferdinand worked at Radio Canada International before joining the Voice of America in 1986. Long-time listeners of VOA are familiar with his first-hand coverage of some of the continent's biggest stories since then, including the Burundi Civil War, the civil wars in the Republic of Congo, and the 1994 Rwandan genocide. I had an opportunity to work with him on the ground in Burundi and Rwanda in 1994. He was so respected, especially in Bujumbura, that I started referring to him as Cote, Mr. Burundi and Cote, which would always trigger a smile on his face. Ferdinand is survived by his mother, 2 sisters in France, and 3 sons, Nicolas, Emmanuel, and Angelo, and all of us here at the Voice of America. May his soul rest in eternal peace. On that note, thanks to our distinguished guests, Gnaka Lagoke, an Ivorian political analyst, Kambale Musavuli, student coordinator and national spokesperson of Friends of the Congo, and last but not least, Rosemary Mwakitange, executive chairperson for the East Africa Business and Media Training Institute, who joined us via telephone link-up from the Tanzanian commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. Thanks to you all and to our affiliate stations. Along with our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in. Coming up next and tomorrow morning, it's Daybreak Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter, but please remember to keep the African hopes alive.